What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers fall to the Jacksonville Jaguars in Week 8, 20-10, a game that didn't leave the greatest taste in many fans' mouths for a number of reasons. Some very key injuries to talk about, some thoughts on the referees that we got to break down, and the offense hitting a pretty historically low mark for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's a rainy Monday. I feel like that's the perfect weather for a non-victory Monday. How you feeling, my friend?
I feel good. I always feel good, but yeah, this is that game was a little frustrating, and then you get the weather today kind of matches it. It just felt like, while it was always technically pretty close, just never felt like the Steelers were in it, or never felt like they really had a serious chance of winning that one, especially after halftime. So you were just kind of waiting for, I don't know, you were waiting for something to happen, and just never really materialized. It was a tough day.
Yeah, I agree. Like the first half, every time they turn the ball over, like every time Jacksonville turned the ball over, I'd get like a little like, the Steelers are going to pull this off. Like, I don't understand how, but the Steelers are going to pull this off. Once Kenny goes down, I was like, all right, it's over. Like, yeah. I'm not saying Mitch is a bad quarterback. I'm just saying, in an offense that can't operate with any quarterback or anybody at all, you can't expect a backup to come in here and come from behind and win a game. Got to give him some props. He almost did, but didn't have high expectations for it. It was a very, very frustrating game for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think, and the fan base. I'll tell you that Acrisure Stadium, man, it died down quick. It was, for a rainy day, it was loaded, and it was loud early in that game. By the fourth quarter, there were very few people in the stands, and I don't blame them. I would have left too. It just kind of felt like a game where at some point you were just like, why am I watching this? Why am I continuing to do this? I felt like the hate on social media, very warranted. I got a lot of people tweeting at me asking, hey, please ask Mike Tomlin what's going on, or some accountability, where the accountability falls, because people are getting sick of things. We'll dive into that, but first let's start with the two major injuries for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Minkah Fitzpatrick goes down with a hamstring injury early in the first quarter. Kenny Pickett goes down with a rib injury right at halftime. Tried to come back, couldn't come back. The Steelers play on Thursday, so you have to expect neither of those guys are going to be a go against the Tennessee Titans. I mean, we'll start with Minkah here. He leaves in the first quarter. DeMonte KZ, Keanu Neal step in for him. Miles Killebrew plays a couple of snaps here and there. I think everybody let up a big play at some point. How much trouble are the Pittsburgh Steelers in right now if they do not have Minkah Fitzpatrick long term? How much does this affect the defense? How dangerous can this get for a team that's going to rely on their defense for probably the rest of the season?
Yeah, I feel like they're in big trouble, quite honestly. This is a huge loss, and you watch those three safeties play the rest of the game on Sunday, and they were not exactly inspiring confidence. Like you said, everyone gave up at least one big play, if not more. I don't know what DeMonte KZ was doing on that last touchdown to Travis Etienne. He comes flying up out of nowhere to try and deflect a pass that was easily at least 3 feet over his head, that he never had a chance of getting that ball. So instead of making a tackle, he flies up while the ball is sailing over his head. But yeah, Keanu Neal struggled. Miles Killebrew obviously struggled. That's a guy who we talked about at the beginning of the year in the preseason just should not see snaps on defense ever. And now he's going to have to, probably. I mean, like, Minkah's a warrior. Minkah's a tough guy, but this is a quick turnaround. That injury, a non-contact injury, didn't look good. I don't feel very optimistic, and it feels like you're going to, I mean, even if you sign a guy or trade for a guy, I feel like this week, getting him ready for a Thursday night football game after he arrives in the building on Monday or whatever is not a recipe for success either, in my opinion. So I mean, at least one game is going to be pretty tough for you.
Yeah, I think the Tennessee, there's no chance that you could get a guy in the building that soon. I will say that they gotta. I think that if, depending on the severity of Minkah's injury, which, just watching, whenever there's a guy that goes to the medical tent and then immediately goes to the locker room, you're like, okay, this is serious. This is nothing that you could expect a short-term injury to be. If he's going on IR, if he is shut down for at least the next 4 games, you're obviously going to lose Tennessee. I don't think you're going to get somebody in time for that one. but you have to make a trade at the deadline. You have to. The deadline's tomorrow, 4 o'clock. There's no way you could ignore it. All those talks about Justin Simmons, that doesn't really make too much sense, but maybe if you're giving up a 3rd-round pick for Justin Simmons, go get Justin Simmons. You know what I mean? You cannot mess around anymore. And to be just totally frank, I thought KZ had some decent plays when Minka was in there, but I mean, he's not like a long-term, he's not a starter. You don't go get Justin Simmons and say, oh, well, we already have a guy in Devontae KZ. They're not even close to the same playing field. You go get a guy, I think it immediately becomes your biggest need if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. Everybody wants to talk about corner. Everybody wants to talk about, the offensive line or center or whatever. It's safety. You are gonna miss a lot of opportunities. You're gonna struggle a lot without Minka out there. You got to go get a safety. I think it's a must. Even if you can't get him in the building for Tennessee, right, you got to go do it. And I'm giving up a 3rd-round pick for Justin Simmons if that's the case, because as we've seen the Steelers offense, they're not going to win through the offense. They're going to win through the defense.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got to invest, in keeping that side of the ball as as elite as it possibly can. And without Minka in there, you're second. I mean, the safeties I felt like were, and Minka specifically, were a lot of what was holding that pass defense together. Like,
yes.
Like the corners had not been good. We've talked about them. They've been real up and down. Joey Porter's coming along a little bit, but it's still a lot to put on their plate as a unit that's struggling to keep up their level of play and then get even better, because that's what they'd have to do without Minka in there to kind of make up for him not being there. But, Minka controls so much from a communication standpoint. He's obviously an electric playmaker. Like, that's just a huge, huge loss. And then it's going to affect a lot of different things in the defense, not just, forcing Devontae KZ to become your number one safety, which isn't ideal.
No, it's not ideal at all. And I agree. Like, if you finally possibly got something at corner, they didn't have a terrible game. Why would you, why would you just sit there and say, like, okay, sounds good, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, because that's Pittsburgh Steelers way? Like, no, just go out and get somebody. You did it a couple of years ago with Minka Fitzpatrick, and I thought that, they're somewhat in the same boat here. They lose Sean Davis early in the season. They lost Ben Roethlisberger. They know that their defense is going to be the unit that carries this group, and they said, hey, whatever, man, we're going to get Minka. We're going to get a star safety because we need a star safety. This year, I think it's somewhat of the same, and this team has a winning record. They have an offense that they trust, even if nobody else trusts. They have the pieces in place where this is somewhat of an excuse to go out and make a move for a safety. I think you have to. The other injury, Kenny Pickett goes down with a rib injury. I think, the play itself, plenty of controversy around that. We're going to get into the refs in a minute here, but Kenny goes down, doesn't come back. He tried to warm up on the sideline, couldn't do it. Mitch goes in. No idea what's going to happen with Kenny. According to Ian Rappaport, as of this morning, the Steelers are not optimistic that he'll be a go for Thursday. Mitch Trubisky's probably in line to start. A lot of people are going to bring up the Mason Rudolph conversation. Oh, who should start at quarterback? Should it be Mitch? Should it be Mason? I think the bottom line is, and maybe you feel differently, the Steelers' offense is going to stink either way. Like, they're not, you could put anybody in there at quarterback. They're going to struggle. Things are not going to go well. It doesn't matter if it's Mitch. It doesn't matter if it's Mason. There's the Matt Canada factor, and the Matt Canada factor is no quarterback's going to succeed here. But that being said, how much trouble are they in if Kenny does not go, and if Kenny's got to miss some time? Like, we know who Kenny Pickett is. He's a tough dude. He's a gamer. He'll push through a lot of injuries. To not be able to go clearly means something is wrong. He's got to miss a couple of games. How bad could this get for the Steelers offense?
Yeah, it can get pretty bad. I mean, for as poor as they've been performing with their starting quarterback, a backup quarterback is not, you can't expect that to give them any better results.
No.
So yeah, this is really bad. Like you said, Kenny's a tough dude. He'll play if there's even if he's at like 60 or 70%, but this can't be good. I'd expect, I think it might, part of me thinks it might have been different if this was a Sunday game versus a Thursday game, but a Thursday game is way too quick of a turnaround. And then you kind of go from there. But yeah, the outlook is just not good for Thursday night. Like, I don't know, Mitch may do a lot of things behind the scenes to help Kenny. I think he's got some experience that can help him, but like, you throw him on the field and the results are it makes
Yeah.
you wonder how this guy even won the job originally when he first
A year
got
ago,
to
right? Yeah.
right. And just we've seen pretty much this exact offense with Mitch at the helm before, and it's not pretty either. It's just your defense loses Minka Fitzpatrick. You don't know what you're going to get from them, and then so you don't you can't expect the defense to carry the offense, and you certainly can't expect the offense to carry a defense that's undermanned now.
Yeah.
So it's we're gonna do on Friday, or I guess we'll do it on Wednesday. Our
Wednesday.
predictions and keys to victory, and I don't even know what the path is at this point. Like to be quite honest, not trying to
No. You have to be honest.
but not trying to sink this team before they even have a chance to step on the field. But I just don't see what the formula to win this game against Tennessee is. I just don't.
I agree. Would you consider Mason? There are a lot of people that would consider Mason.
Yes, I've talked to some of these people.
Did you see Mark Caboli's tweet?
No,
during
I
the
didn't.
game.
I did not.
He just tweeted out a gif of Mason Rudolph. Mark is Mason Rudolph's biggest fan. He just tweeted out a gif of Mason Rudolph, kind of leaving that one up for interpretation. You're not make this a quarterback competition in the one day of practice that they're going to have.
No, I mean, I guess you can have the conversation, but I also don't I guess it wouldn't really change anything. I mean, maybe I understand the argument a little bit. Like Mason probably has the bigger arm, and so if you're thinking
the bigger arm that he uses to check down a lot,
right? But also if you think okay, if we can tell him, look, you're not allowed to throw checkdowns. You can only throw deep balls to George. That's all we're gonna do, and then you're handing it off to Jalen and Najee. Maybe. But I still don't think you throw Mason Rudolph in there that you're going to have any better results than if you throw Mitch Trubisky in there. And if all you're looking for is something different, then I guess so. Maybe that makes sense, but I'm not really sure that it gets you anywhere further.
No. So Mason is a guy that I mean, look at. I think Mason's a great dude. I enjoy talking to him. I think he's a good professional and he's living the dream as a QB3, let's be honest. But Mitch is a guy where if the Pittsburgh Steelers, you just got to look at the big picture. The Pittsburgh Steelers offense is terrible. Their offensive line struggles at times. They have absolutely no running game. I mean, they rushed 12 times. They averaged 2.6 yards a carry against the Jaguars. 12 times. It was a one possession game up until the fourth quarter. You ran the ball 12 times. That's a Matt Canada thing. I get it, but that's just the picture. That's the reality that the Pittsburgh Steelers are dealing with right now, is that they have a very incompetent offense. You're not going to put a stable quarterback back there and say, all right, things are going to work out now. No, the best thing you could do without Kenny Pickett is to just put Mitch Trubisky out there and say, look it, man, if you don't see anybody, if you do not see single coverage anywhere, you run the football. You go get 6 yards and you slide every single time. Doesn't matter because you're not throwing an interception. Don't throw an interception. Run the football as much as you want to run the football. That's how we're going to try to win this game. Is it going to work? Probably not, but I just don't think there's a real argument for Mason Rudolph. I get where people are coming from, whereas in Mitch, Mitch was terrible. Stepping in there, he was as bad as it could get. His interception to Allen Robinson, if that was George Pickens, I'm like, okay, I get it. Desperation throw. You're going to throw it up to George. Understandable to a degree. Allen Robinson, 4 years ago, maybe you're making that call. Not today. That was just a bad throw. He had a couple of those. I get where fans are coming from. I get where some people are coming from. You got to let Mitch go out there and just say, hey, you're the more athletic option, which means you could get out of trouble a little bit more. Maybe we could utilize that. But if we're going to be honest, if the Pittsburgh Steelers throw the football more than 20 times against the Titans, I mean, Matt Canada shouldn't have a job today, but there should be no offensive coordinator come Friday morning, because that is just, you have two very competent running backs. You have an offensive line that is full of people who could run block. That's what they do well, is run block, and a backup quarterback. It doesn't matter who's at quarterback. It should be a running football game for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, and to be fair, I don't think I'm going to judge Matt Canada a whole lot off of what happens in this Titans game, because
I 100% am.
Well, he's set up to fail. Like everyone is set up to fail this week. It seems like it's not.
Yeah,
I
but
don't think
the
it's going to be
Titans,
pretty. It's
and I'm not trying to compare Will Levis to Mitch Trubisky. I'm really not, or the Arizona Cardinals. But like, I think the Arizona Cardinals are a better example than, or the Cleveland Browns are a better example than the Tennessee Titans. But there are teams out there who have backup quarterbacks who, I mean, the Browns got thrown into the worst situation of all time, where they have $230 million quarterback who just 30 seconds before football games decides he doesn't want to play anymore, and then they got to work with a practice squad guy, and they're still winning, or at least coming close to winning. The Arizona Cardinals are working with Josh Dobbs. Shout out Josh Dobbs. He's having a great year, but they're making games competitive. The Tennessee Titans just tossed their rookie quarterback out there, and he threw for 4 touchdowns. Like, good offensive coordinators could at least give their team an opportunity no matter who's out there. Bad offensive coordinators, you have to come up with excuses on why you shouldn't judge them for how bad their offense is. That's just how I feel.
Yeah, I get that. But I feel like also Dobbs and I mean, look at what the Bears are doing. Like
The Bears.
yeah, I feel like Dobbs and I mean Will Levis just might be more talented than
Yeah, Will
I
Levis looks
thought
like
he
a stud.
was, which I would not have guessed.
No.
Who was the other team you brought up?
The Browns, PJ Walker.
Yeah, the Browns. Well, yeah, Browns seemed like pretty. I mean, I like PJ Walker, but yeah, I don't know. Those seem like exceptions to the rules more than because I don't know. Is it all that like? Is it really that common for backup quarterbacks to even to really even give their teams real chances? I feel like that's not
Four
very
of them,
common.
including Tyson Baggett, who if I
give them a chance. Well, I guess he won a game.
He
but
won a game. He won his first game.
But then he gets smoked the first time he goes to face a real team.
No, I 100% stand that or understand that. But the Tennessee Titans until yesterday were not a real team. They weren't. They
What's
were a
their
bad
record
team.
right?
I don't know, but they were not good. They were thinking about clearing house. Like everybody's going. And then they win a game and everybody's like, all right, maybe they got something in Will Levis. And I agree with that one. I'm just saying that, like you just can't you just can't give up. You can't look at it right now and just be like, well, they're going to lose that one and say, oh, well, you can't blame the coaches for that one. Otherwise, you have to scratch the next man up mentality and the fact that, and maybe not pay Mitch Trubisky $5 million.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of problems that go back way beyond, just having some injuries this year. But like, I don't need to. I can scratch whatever I want. Like, I'm not in the building. Like, I don't need to participate in next man up mentality. I don't need to be like, a believer in whatever depth they have. Like, yeah. I think we can all kind of acknowledge that they're fighting an uphill battle, and that no amount of like belief in your depth is really going to change that. Like,
would you do it the other way around? Like, if Mitch comes out here and wins, plays really well, Steelers offense plays really well, you giving Matt Canada credit for that one?
Yeah. I mean, that's
So it's a one-sided coin.
Yeah, I think when you're not at full strength and when you're not at full strength when you don't have your starting quarterback, I think it's fair to say this offense is not reaching its full potential, and that's not necessarily the offensive coordinator's fault. But when he overcomes a bad situation, when he doesn't have the starting quarterback when he doesn't have a starting quarterback, I think it's fair to say, wow, you overcame a tough situation and scored all these points or got out of there with the win. That feels reasonable to me.
Yeah, that does. Now that you've broken that, does feel reasonable. I hear what you're saying there. I still think that I'm looking at this as Matt Canada's got an opportunity maybe to prove something. Maybe I should word it like that. Maybe Matt Canada has an opportunity to prove something. And if he doesn't prove something, he's on the same playing field that he was coming into the game, which is, about as low as it gets. Maybe that's how I'll word it. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to pretend like, oh, well, Matt Canada's been doing really well, so we don't need to, we can judge him off of lots of other things. Yeah, we can judge him off of lots of other things because he has had 7 games this year where he did have his starting quarterback in there. So we'll judge him off of those, maybe not this one.
Okay. All right. I agree. I could agree with that stance. Either way, rough situation for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And for those hoping for Mason Rudolph, you're not going to get Mason Rudolph, unfortunately, unless something happens and he's out there, but we'll take that as it is. Let's move on to the other end of this football game, which was the Pittsburgh Steelers feeling as if they kind of got gypped in this one. Deontay Johnson had no part of the refs. Nobody had any part of the refs. We'll dive into it, but first we got to hear what Deontay said, and seemingly, got himself fined for saying the fine hasn't come out yet, but we could all predict and, should pretty much expect that he's going to get fined. This is what he had to say about the refs after the game.
To get things going and turn things around faster, move the ball faster.
Even with how everything went, if you get the field goal at the end of the first half, you're down 9-6.
Refs is killing us the whole game. The same refs we had at training camp, but at the end of the day, if it's not on them, we can't keep complaining about the refs. Like Coach T said, you can't worry about the refs or whatever, but everybody's different. I ain't like the refs today. They must have got paid good today or something, but that field goal, that hurt us coming into the half. Like, we needed that. Like, we would have been tied. And they got the ball back, would have got the ball back right there again. Probably scored. Who knows? That field goal hurt us.
You ticked about the roughing the passer calls.
Yes, they was calling some stupid stuff. Like, they should get fined for calling making worse terrible calls and stuff like that. Like, that's how pissed I am. Like, because they cost us the game. I don't care what nobody say. They cost us the game. Like, yeah, I got to make plays, them 2 plays, them catches and whatever, but that don't define, you know what I'm saying, the whole game.
One more, guys.
How about them missing the call on Kenny where he hurt his ribs? Looked like he got rough there.
Man, they wanted them to win. But they was calling. Everything was in their favor. Like, they were getting every little call. Like, but it is what it is. But we can't. Like I said, I'm moving on from it. Like, I'm ready for Thursday.
Yikes. Big yikes.
Yeah.
I think the highlight of that one is they wanted them to win. They must have got a good payday. He knew. He was interviewed 2-3 times after that one. Just like, and I don't know, I didn't go back in because at that point I kind of felt like I was like contributing. I was like, all right, I'm getting this guy. I'm costing this guy money. I like Deontay. I don't want to do this to him. But he went at least 2 more times and spoke to media after that game. The Pittsburgh Steelers as a whole, there were a number of them. And I think that I want to make it clear before we dive into this, because I was getting roasted on Twitter by plenty of people, that you could have a conversation, and I think this is how I acknowledge it at least, is that the Pittsburgh Steelers could still stink and lose themselves a football game, and the refs could also be awful. And I think those are 2 conversations that you have to have. I think this is a conversation more about how bad the refs actually are in the NFL right now, and how the Pittsburgh Steelers finally got a taste of that. And obviously they're going off, but this has been a problem all season where every team kind of gets their taste of bad referees, and the Steelers got theirs. Obviously, there was the Kenny Pickett play, which was, everybody watched that one earlier in the game. Keanu Neal, the most beautiful tackle I've ever seen. That is, you could take that to Pee Wee football camp, and they're going to tell you should tackle exactly like that for the rest of your life. Gets tossed for a roughing the passer. Kenny Pickett gets pile drived into the turf, no flags thrown, full body weight. I don't think that anybody should get called for roughing the passer. I think that's a ridiculous call, but at some point you got to be even. I think the more ridiculous ones was completely missing the tackle as Kenny Pickett runs out of bounds right before he gets hurt. And then obviously the sequence that followed that, which is a 10-second injury runoff on a play that was an incomplete pass, which makes no sense, which means that the clock stopped and there was no anything, and then, or there shouldn't have been anything. And then the field goal, Mike Tomlin said it himself. He's never in a million years seen an offsides called on the offense during a field goal. And then you go back and you look at the picture, and it's blowing up all over social media right now. The Jaguars are like 1.5 feet offsides. Nobody from Pittsburgh is offsides or anywhere close. And I think just to sum it all up, Chris Boswell let it be known. Mike Tomlin let it be known. Everybody said something. When Isaac Seumalo says that it wasn't a good call and that he expects an apology at some point during the week, and he was joking, obviously he was being sarcastic. When Isaac Seumalo says something, you done messed up, because that guy never talks. We could have a normal conversation. That guy's 4 words max. And then here he is saying something. That's how you know you messed up. Referees, not the cause for concern for the Pittsburgh Steelers, not the reason they lost this game. Still, just as bad of a day for them as it was the Pittsburgh Steelers as a whole.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you raise a good point that you know a football team is expected to be 1 point better than their opponents.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to have to factor in the human element of referees, their subjective opinions of certain calls into your game plan and into to how you approach a game. I get it, like refs are going to make mistakes, but you don't have to be okay with it when those mistakes come at big moments and
Mm-hmm.
they materially affect the final score of the game, which you can argue they did. I mean, the field goal one at the end of the half, that was a big one. And it's just the more you look at it, the more kind of confusing it is that was the conclusion that they came to.
Yes.
Did you really have what was your beef with the Kenny running out of bounds? What did you want there? Did you want like
I was
a late
okay
hit?
with him. I was okay. Yeah, I wanted a late hit. I was okay with him hitting the ball, but the rule clearly states that if the quarterback is running out of bounds, he doesn't have to be out of bounds. He's protected as a defenseless player almost once you realize he's actually running out of bounds. You could hit the ball away. I was cool with that. But to like bring him to the ground, I thought should have been 15. Like, and that's my thing is in the time, like you're trying to make you're mounting a 2-minute drive there. That's a huge penalty if you get it.
Yeah.
If you don't get it. And then like, I mean, that one was bad, but the Kenny Pickett sack was worse. The 10-second runoff was the worst of them all. That one made absolutely it was like they forgot what the play was. And they were like,
Well,
oh, okay.
Well, and oddly enough, that was the one Mike Tomlin was like most chill about. I guess like he didn't really seem to care about that one more than the offsides call, and I guess he didn't talk about the roughing the passer. But in general, the Steelers did not really care about that 10-second runoff. Like they seemed pretty even keeled about it, or maybe just thought other things were more important.
Yeah. And then the Joey Porter Jr. one, I think, slips under the radar a lot. He gets called for a face mask tackling Travis Etienne. You go back and watch the replay. Travis Etienne is full grip of this man's face mask, and they call it on. And I don't know, maybe Joey had a grip of the face mask. Either way, you got to call it both ways because you're clearly watching the play. I just think it was overall, man, we got a problem with the refs in the NFL. We've been lucky enough to avoid it covering the Pittsburgh Steelers. This one was bad, and I don't know how you fix it, but you have to acknowledge it, at some point you have to say like, there's got to be a reason that there's got to be a way to fix this,
Yeah, it was bad, and I think it is worse for the Steelers just because I don't think. I mean, Deontay was talking about how that field goal was huge and that really affects the outcome of the game, and I get what he's saying. I get the argument, but I think it's harder to kind of point out something wrong with the refs, especially to get the attention of the league in a situation like this, because I don't think these calls like really materially affected, like in a real way affected the outcome of the game. Like I don't think the game would have ended differently if some of these calls swung the Steelers' way instead of the Jaguars' way.
No, I 100% agree. I agree. I think that maybe there's like a slight chance that they're in a better situation there at the end, but they're still in a pretty good situation there at the end before Mitch throws that interception in triple coverage, so it doesn't affect the outcome of the game. And Mike Tomlin, which, I have a real issue with him saying this, but he said after the game, he was like, the first half doesn't impact the end, the outcome of the game. And in my head, I was like, that's not true. That's the complete opposite of true. But I understand what you're saying when it comes to the penalties and that kind of stuff. I think that my thing with the refs and whatever, the refs sucked. It is what it is. I think my problem with the situation is that now the Pittsburgh Steelers have an excuse to continue to suck and to not make any changes and to be in the same situation that they've been in week after week after week, because now they could say, oh, okay, well, we were really bad, but the refs screwed us. But our quarterback went down, and this is a good way to transition into the offense because, quite frankly, I don't care how bad the refs were. I don't care that you lost your quarterback. You still stunk in every facet of the game. The Pittsburgh Steelers stunk. Let me just let me read off some stats here because I've been bookmarking stats on Twitter for the last 12 hours, just going hard because there are a million of them. Most consecutive games under 400 total yards in the last 30 seasons. I guess at that point they were the Oakland Raiders, but they are now the Las Vegas Raiders. They still lead the way at 75. Second place now, moving strong into second place after yesterday. The Pittsburgh Steelers, 20 to 2023, 55 games, 55 consecutive games, no 400-yard games for Matt Canada. Never once has he done it. Let me continue to just add to this real quick. Over the last 4 games, the Pittsburgh Steelers are averaging 83 yards of offense in the first half. 83 yards. They are averaging just 5.5 first downs per half. Are in the first half, per first half. They have scored 9 points in those first halves. The last 4 games, they've scored 9 points in a first half. You could keep going. The Steelers averaged 2.6 yards per carry on 12 rushes yesterday. And then just to give you a grand scheme of things, where the Pittsburgh Steelers currently sit. Offensively, points per game, 31st in the league. Yards per game, 31st in the league. Rushing yards per game, 28th in the league. Yards per carry, 29th in the league. Passing yards per game, 25th in the league. Time of possession, 32nd. Pressures and dropbacks, 29th in the NFL. It's as bad as it gets. Every week we've come on here and we've said, you know what it is now. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to use the refs as an excuse. They're going to use Kenny Pickett as an excuse. But you look at the stats, things are as bad as they get for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense right now.
Yeah, it's really bad. And I think the one stat that really stands out to me for no reason, for one reason, it is the one stat that they are actually dead last in. There are a lot of, 28th, 31st, but they are 32nd in time of possession. They are not even staying on the field, like they can't even control the clock at all. They can't even possess the ball. It's just 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out. It's that part is pretty damning to me, especially because if you're this offense, you have been gifted a really elite defense.
Yes.
That has kept you in tons of games and given you every chance to even look competent, Like, that's the thing. For most of the time, they only have to be good for like a quarter,
Yes.
In order to win games. And, they can't even meet like the lowest of standards that this team is set for them. And it just feels like there's too much talent for that to be the case on this team.
Yeah. So let me read off a quote, because Mike Tomlin was asked after the game yesterday where the Pittsburgh Steelers, about the Steelers going, I think it was 12 and out before they got a first down. And that first down, that I believe, came on a penalty. So shout out to the refs, because they did hand the Steelers at least one of them. He says, quote, cut off the question, actually, and said, quote, the early portions of games doesn't decide the outcome. It doesn't. It usually doesn't. It didn't today. Obviously, you want more fluid starts, but it didn't determine the outcome of the game. Let me just remind everybody real quick, because I'm not trying to say Mike Tomlin's wrong here, but he's wrong. The Pittsburgh Steelers went 12 and out. During those 12 and outs, they had not 1, but 2 turnovers in the red zone for Jacksonville, which means that Jacksonville, if they don't come up with those turnovers, are looking at, a 14-0 lead over the Pittsburgh Steelers. If the Steelers turn either one of those turnovers into a touchdown, they tie this ball game, and they don't have to worry about going down by 10, and they don't have to worry about Mitch Trubisky freaking out, and the outcome of the game possibly looks much different than it did. So does the early portions of a game matter for an offense? No, I don't think that an opening drive touchdown in every game results to a win every single week. I do think that going 12 and out and giving your defense, and your defense giving yourself every opportunity to win and succeed, yeah, that is a huge negative, and one that most times will lead to a loss, because you can't take advantage of the opportunities that you're given as an offense.
Yeah, that's the thing. The opportunities came in the first half, like the really big opportunities to put some pressure on Jacksonville came in the first half and really in the first quarter. So yeah, I sort of understand where Mike Tomlin's coming from, and that, just because you start fast doesn't mean you're always going to win a game. But if you are leaving opportunities on the table in the first half, then yeah, your first half might determine the game. You know,
Yes.
like these opportunities matter whether they come in the first quarter, the second quarter, third, or fourth. You have to capitalize on them because points are worth just as much early in games as they are later in games.
Exactly. Like especially and like you watched it. The defense got tired. They let up more plays. They couldn't come up with turnovers. Eventually it led to success for Jacksonville. Like that's just going to happen. You want to know why? Cuz people get tired because you're out you only get 3 plays of rest. 3 plays of rest for a defense that's trying to compete up with a very fast, young and elusive offense. It's not going to work out. But again, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to use the refs. They're going to use Kenny Pickett as an excuse. Nothing's going to change. I mean, I don't want to. I feel like if I say this, people are going to take this in the wrong light because I do think that it was just like a coach consoling like an injured player. But Matt Canada is sharing a moment with Kenny in the locker room yesterday after the game, and he just like laughs. He like laughed. And in my head, I immediately thought, man, if a Pittsburgh Steelers fan was in here, they'd be pissed right now. They would not be happy that Matt Canada's laughing. It was like immediately after the game. Like not like, like whatever, like Kenny's sitting there and again, I think that it's consoling, but I do think that is a guy, in my opinion, I looked at that as a guy that's very confident that his job is secure. And I just feel like
why wouldn't he be? I mean,
why wouldn't it be? Yeah, I agree with that. But I think that's the problem of where they are. You know what I mean? Yeah. Is that there is no pressure. There is no hot seat. There is no nothing. It's just, this is our guys. This is our team. We're going to rock with this team for as long as everybody wants to stick around, and we will not make any changes. And I think that is just going to lead to less and less success. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's the balance between continuity and letting guys feel each other out versus, a sense of urgency. But
I feel like 3 years though.
Exactly. I was just gonna say, like, continuity. Look how far that's gotten you now. So
yeah,
something you got to think about.
Exactly. I feel like if this wasn't year 3, I feel like if this was year 1, totally different environment, totally different situation. People got to calm down. Year 3, we're at a point right now where there's been almost no signs of success and a lot of signs of there's no pressure on these guys to create success. And that is, I said it might to go today. It doesn't matter if it's Matt Canada. It doesn't matter if it's Kenny Pickett. It doesn't matter if George Pickens or Najee Harris or the offensive line or whoever the issue is needs to change. Like there needs to be a change because at this point, it's just the same thing over and over again. And the definition of insanity is to continuously do the same thing and expect different results. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have been 3 years of insanity, and they're pushing the Steelers fans towards insanity, and I just think that is, it's a tough place to be if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I don't know. That one, it didn't rub me the wrong way. I could care less, but I felt like in the moment, and I wasn't the only one. There were people around me that said it, that were like, that looks like a guy that's real confident that he's going to be here on Friday. And I said, okay, sounds good to me, and that's where they are. All right. Let's finish off this bad boy with where we stand with the Pittsburgh Steelers. 4-3, Tennessee, Thursday night. Will Levis looks good. Pittsburgh Steelers do not look so good. Where do you stand with the Pittsburgh Steelers as they approach Tennessee, a Green Bay team that is probably winnable, but you never know, and then 2 very difficult AFC North matches on the road?
Yeah, I mean, I struggle with this because you look at their wins. And their wins are like as good as anyone's in football. Like, I keep forgetting. Browns, Ravens,
Baltimore.
And they won Vegas
and
LA.
Vegas,
in LA. So, but that trio of LA, Baltimore, and Cleveland, those are really good wins, and they looked really good in those games. Like, so to turn around and then fall completely on your face against Jacksonville, LA, and the Texans is, I just don't know which is more representative of this team. Some really good wins against some pretty good competition versus some really ugly losses against even better competition. Like I think last week I said I still need them to prove something to me, and they, in order to get them back up to that status of like, oh, for sure they're going to make the playoffs, possibly make a run. And I feel like I'm still in a prove it kind of situation, but I feel like it's more prove it to know that you can even be competitive like down the stretch of this year and make the playoffs because maybe it's just the AFC, maybe it's the entire league, but like
Yeah.
there's a lot of parity. There are a lot of really competitive teams. There's very few teams rising to the top. The path does not get any easier,
Yeah.
Like you're struggling right now and it doesn't get any easier from here on out.
Yeah. I like how you worded that because it really doesn't. Like the Steelers, they had an opportunity to take advantage of right now and they beat Jacksonville. They're in like a really, really, really good spot to just climb their way to the postseason and feel good about where they are. Now it's looking like come this weekend, they could be 4-4. And that's a really difficult spot to be in because even if you beat Green Bay the week after that, chances are you're not going to go 2-0 against Cleveland and Cincy, both on the road back-to-back weeks. And then, yeah, you got some like winnable games after that, but you're going to be you're in a spot. The Pittsburgh Steelers have put themselves in a spot where, just like you said, there's so much parity in the NFL. Now they have to fight their way every single week to make sure that they stay in the playoff hunt. And that is not a spot that you want to be if you're a team that could barely squeeze by with some wins and who are dealing with injuries. And it's not the place to be for any team in the NFL, but especially a team without an offense. That's tough to beat. Do I view them as a playoff team? I think right now I'm very iffy. Like I'm very much so on the line just because I don't know if they're going to beat Tennessee. I think that's a really tough call just because of how good Tennessee looked. And if you're sitting there at 4-4, you cannot feel good about your chances moving forward. Like you can't feel good about the last quarter of the season and where they are. I would say for the first time this year, I'm uncertain about where I stand with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I know that's not like a good answer, but I think that's where I am.
Yeah, that's they're just about 500. That's to feel uncertain. Most of their games have swung teetered on the edge of win or loss.
One possession games. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's perfectly reasonable to not know, to feel like you're teetering on the edge of good team or bad team, playoff team or not. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I agree. Just to let everybody know before we head out of here, if the season did end today, the Pittsburgh Steelers would travel to Jacksonville to play the Jaguars in the first round of the playoffs. So, and I know we didn't get to talk about it, but the Jags, they talked a lot of smack after that game to George Pickens, and I'm sure if the season ended today, he'd remember all that. I'm sure he'd remember it in week 19, I guess, wild card weekend, but he'd remember it, and it'd be very interesting. We'll leave it at that one. It'd be very interesting. All right, with that, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts and find all of our work at allsteelers.com and our pick coverage at InsideThePanthers.com. We will be back on Wednesday. Remember, the game is on Thursday this week, so Wednesday, preview at Tennessee, our keys to victory, our game predictions. And right now, I think the next 2 days are going to determine a lot of how we feel. Enjoy a rainy but a beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.